So I've read today that JP Morgan has hired someone to basically, I didn't use these words, but I'm going to use these words, protect JP Morgan as best as it possibly can from what it's about to incur when the regulators, aka the Securities Exchange Commission and or CFTC, really start to poke and prod into JP Morgan, how they incurred that big old loss. As Max Kaiser's been saying, they claim they hedged things for clients. What they're going to ultimately find out is that it's absolutely not a hedge whatsoever, and that they're basically breaking the law. And they call it a hedge because if it's considered a hedge, then you're not breaking the law. So who better, if you know that what's coming, and the regulators who have looked the other way on purpose now have no choice but to call you out on it, because hey, JP Morgan, we're the regulators, you know we were on your side, but now that this is made public, you know we have to act. Yeah, I know. Okay, so you as JP Morgan, what would be the best person you could get to represent you, not necessarily in court, but protect you against, in other words, who's got inside information in the CFTC? Who could we pull over here that would know the procedures of the CFTC, what they're going to be looking for, how we can get around it, right? We need someone who's been inside the CFTC. Hey, there is a guy. I didn't print it out, so I can't give you his name right now because I don't remember it. But sure enough, former enforcement officer of the CFTC, not law enforcement, by the way, enforcement officer, is where they would take action against somebody like JP Morgan, right? That division of the CFTC. Former enforcement officer is going to go work for JP Morgan right now. They're being hired to help JP Morgan get through this. So what are the chances that JP Morgan would actually go and get a former CFTC enforcement officer, of all people, because he just wants to make sure they comply, right? What better way? We got to get the best of the best. That's what we're doing. We're just getting the best of the best, nothing more, nothing less. When in reality, they're going to pull the guy over there so he can tell him the loopholes, how to get out of it. This is what you need to say. Make sure you say this. Don't ever say that. When they ask you this, you're going to have to say that, etc. That's the guy. That is the guy in that division, the enforcement division of the CFTC. He's former now. Doesn't work there anymore. He would know exactly what you need to say, what you need not say, etc. Man, it was so interesting today watching some testimony in Congress. They had a little hearing today, and they had, as I call him, Gary the Turd Burglar Gensler, head chairman of the CFTC, and what's her name, Sheila Shields or something like that, head of SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. And when you listen to them get asked questions by the congressman in this little committee, it's interesting because the same reactions, the same facial expressions, the same everything. Got a bozo here stopping at a green light. And the same, basically, like when they have Ben Bernanke on there and they're grilling him, and Congressman Ron Paul is just nailing him, and you know he has no answer. He can't possibly tell the truth, so he skates around it. You see his face, you see him stutter a little bit. You can tell he's extremely uncomfortable. That's the best way to put it. You can tell this person is extremely uncomfortable with the questions. And then when you start to really ask the good questions, like Ron Paul does, he gets even more uncomfortable. So why I'm saying that is it's interesting to watch guys and girl, the girl of the SEC, head of the SEC, and the guy, Gary Gensler, who was a former Goldman Sachs guy, or yeah, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. So he had to excuse himself from that investigation because, you know, it could be a conflict of interest. No, what I was thinking is it was a conflict of interest from the freaking day you got the job, considering you were a banker before, at the top, by the way, of the banking class. So these people, these two, the girl and the guy, especially the guy, Gary Gensler, who is basically head of the CFTC. That'd be like the head of the police department being asked some questions, you know, maybe from the mayor and the city council about, you know, some bad guys that they caught the other day, some drug dealers or some mafia guys. Do you think the police chief would be like sweating and, oh man, why'd they have to ask me that? And, you know, trying to scale up. Thank you, Mayor, for asking that question, but I'm going to have to refer you to the council because I honestly don't know. I wasn't a part of that. And then you ask something else that's we really want to hear the answer. I gotta refer you to council. No, he would know. He's the head of the CFTC. He is the chairman, the head of all commissioners. He himself is a commissioner, but he is the head commissioner. And he's telling them, I'm gonna have to refer you back to council. I don't know when, because he was being grilled about MF Global. And when did you guys find out that the customer funds weren't there? Well, and he even said, well, the CME group, my favorite CME group, you know them, the margin hikers, they told us the money was there. They guaranteed the money was there. Everyone signed off on it. I know that much, but the specifics, when they knew that and when we found out after they said that it wasn't the case, I'll have to refer you to council. And that's the answer this bozo gives. And when you look at him answering these questions, and they touched on JP Morgan too, by the way, and some of that stuff, and is there a system we can put in place that kind of, you know, sounds off alarm bells in advance to kind of give us, you know, a pre-warning kind of thing for something like this in advance? And, you know, they try to answer, they're just softball questions most of the time. But when they start really asking him the questions that he doesn't want to answer, as if he was a banker himself, as if the bank, JP Morgan and MF Global, were standing there answering questions, that's the look and the responses I got from our commissioner, who's supposed to keep our society safe as far as the markets are concerned, people in America, our markets. You're supposed to keep us safe. They're there for the people, not for the banks. Although you could argue and say you're there for the people and the banks, right? You want to be fair to everybody, and that's a fair statement. But clearly, you're not for anybody, and you are just for the banks. And it proved so when they sat there and grilled him all day long, and his responses were that of like Ben Bernanke or John Corzine in front of them, or the Bank of America head, and they had some of the other banks back in 2008, 2009 when they were grilling them about the crisis, trying to pretend like they were giving them some kind of hardball questions, you know, to make society think that they're really doing something when nobody's even been in trouble yet, for God's sakes. But even so, the answers, the red face, the sweating, the looking around, you know, the whole 9 yards, these people are just, they don't want to be here right now. They're extremely uncomfortable. And that's our protector, right? So back to the analogy of the police chief who just caught a bunch of, you know, they caught, you know, $2 million worth of marijuana or cocaine or whatever, and the biggest drug bust in the city. Cameras are here, all the local media's here. Hey, congratulations, chief of police. Which one of your officers did it? Oh, it was the Vice team over here. They did it. Man, congratulations. Can we ask you a few questions? Absolutely. Where did you catch them? I'm gonna have to refer you to my counsel. Well, you know, I mean, you're the chief of police, the biggest bust ever. Weren't you briefed on this? No, I stepped aside on this one because, you know, I was a former gang member a long time ago, and because it dealt with the gang, I felt like there might be a conflict of interest as chief of police, so I didn't help investigate. So I can't answer that. Really, but you could bring someone with you that you know would have these answers, that you already know these people are going to want to ask questions about. You could bring somebody with you. You could have brought counsel with you, couldn't you? And counsel probably was there behind him and was never called upon, of course. Naturally, we're not going to probably hear the information that this particular congressman wanted from him. So, long story short, CFTC former enforcement division officer is now going to go help JP Morgan figure out how the hell to get out of the mess they're in. Clearly. Another interesting thing, and I don't know if it was the same guy, I don't think it was. I think it was a law firm where this guy was coming from that used to work at the CFTC, I think. But nonetheless, this law firm that's going to be helping out JP Morgan, you know, against charges and whatnot that are going to be coming, just so happens to be the guy that's head of that's going to be personally handling this for JP Morgan, just so happens, by coincidence, to be the same guy that also helped the Enron scandal and the WorldCom scandal skate through as best they could, and people's heads did roll in those two things, but especially Enron, but not everybody. And again, Enron was a fake energy company. It wasn't even real. And they got into these little derivatives things, and they blew up in their face. So, long story short, we've got the same, and another example I'll give you before I gotta go here. Iran-Contra scandal, I wish I remember the guy's name. He was head of the commission, the investigative committee, kind of like the 9/11 commission, and they had their 9/11 commission report. The head of the commission went from there. I think he went to like Oklahoma City bombing, or maybe it was the Waco thing to get them out of that mess, and straight from there, right into the 9/11 commission. So he was an Iran-Contra, then he went to I think it was Waco or somewhere else, and then after that, they put him on, because he whitewashed that so well, let's go get him on the 9/11 commission. And every real piece of evidence that was brought into the commission, such as World Trade Center 7, complete collapse just like the Twin Towers, yet it wasn't even hit by a plane, and still fell at what gravity would call free fall speed if there's nothing in the way. Top of the building, middle of the building, etc. The whole thing went down like a demolition. It can only be explained by demolition unless the ground gave out and the thing fell down. That's the only way that's explainable. As much as you may not like that fact, that's a fact. And they left World Trade Center 7 completely, 100% out of the 9/11 Commission report. It wasn't even mentioned. And NIST, NIST, National Institute for Standard and Technology, got all kinds of video evidence, data. We've determined that this one column out of, 12 or 25 or whatever columns, this one column gave way and caused the entire building to collapse. Now, do you think we could build a building anytime in the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever years, high-rise buildings, and this was only 47 stories, by the way, do you think that one column failing with our technological advancement in society for the last, 100 years, we're going to build something to where one column out of 12 or 24 or however many major columns were in this thing is going to cause the systematic collapse and make it fall to where the entire building falls? One column over here buckles and the entire building falls down at the same exact speed at the same exact time, and has the classic crank line down the middle of a demolition where they make it fold in the center so it folds in on itself. That one column that fell could do that. Yeah, I'm sure it could. Right. So the bottom line is, that's what they do. They get the guy that handled it last time. Let's put our best guys in. He whitewashed it so well, and you'll find out he'll probably get a great higher paying job than he's got now. So this lawyer or law firm, whatever, that responded and helped with Enron and then helped with WorldCom is now helping with Jamie Dimon Con, aka JP Morgan, to whitewash it as best as they possibly can and be represented by the best of the best who can do such a great whitewashing job. You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried. The amount of stuff happening days and days now, all these videos I'm doing, it's just incredible how much stuff is actually unfolding. Even though it's going to be a little while till we get to the bottom of JP Morgan, it's still going to be a little while till we get to the bottom of MF Global, which happened back in November. Can't wait to see how it crumbles, though. Speaking of things that are crumbling and falling, can't wait to see how that turd, JP Morgan and friends, falls. And keep in mind, as much as it should fall, absolutely positively should be destroyed, it's the Fed. JP Morgan is the Fed. You're going to see Bank of America or Citigroup or someone else go that wasn't even exposed as much as JP Morgan is to these derivatives and whatnot, because JP Morgan is the Fed. It has the backing of the Fed. Bank of America and those guys do have it to an extent, not like Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan. JP Morgan, back in the day, is one of the sole persons responsible for creating the Federal Reserve in the first place. Do you think his now bank 99 years later, is going to get the can from the entity that it helped create? I don't think so. But stranger things have happened, and I would be dancing in the street if I saw JP Morgan collapse. I would. But take it for what it's worth. Take care.